Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. We have a Tier 9 arms race battle for you today, here on the Northern Waters map. Hang on a minute, Jingles. Ein Minuten bitte, said the more alert amongst you. If this is a Tier 9 battle, what's up with the two Tier 6s on the enemy team? I was hoping you'd spot that. This isn't some new 3-tier matchmaking system that Wargaming have introduced to make life even more miserable for you in your bottom tier. No, that's a failed division. The Colorado on the enemy team, the Tier 7 battleship, has divisioned up with a pair of Tier 6 battleships, the Renown and the Ismail, and dragged them into a Tier 9 battle. And it has not gone unnoticed in chat, and judging by the chat, I'm confident in saying that this is once again a North American server replay. I'm on food stamps and they put me in Tier 9. Yeah, definitely the North American server. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Renown and the Ismail are both good ships, but they're Tier 6 good. They're definitely not Tier 9 good. And the Colorado that they've divisioned up with is barely even Tier 7 good. But anyway, enough about them. Today, it's all about Bird Hunter 95 here in the Kitakaze. Very much a Tier 9 destroyer, and also his division mate, Unstoppable Degenerate, in the Tier 9 Russian, I'm going to call it a battlecruiser, the Kronstadt. I mean, it fits the battlecruiser definition. Honking great big guns, good enough armour to protect itself against other cruisers, and fast enough to run away from anything that outguns it like an actual battleship. It was the first ship of that type to be introduced into the game, by the way. These days they call them supercruisers in this game, but back then they hadn't yet coined that term. But anyway, whatever. Bird Hunter in the Kitakaze, Japanese Tier 9 gunboat destroyer. An excellent ship. And you know a ship is good if, after its introduction, it gets nothing but nerfs. Right? No buffs. Just a whole series of nerfs, and it still kicks ass. I mean, this is a very, very good destroyer. Downsides? It's not very fast. It's also not particularly manoeuvrable. Its top speed is something like 36 knots, which doesn't seem too bad, but then you realise that Russian, French, Italian destroyers leave this thing standing. I mean, some of these enemy destroyers can do 40 knots without breaking a sweat. And with various different buffs running, some of them can do nearly or more than 50 knots. So yeah, 36, distinctly pedestrian. Also, it only gets one torpedo launcher. Although it does get a torpedo reload booster. And doesn't have to choose between a reload booster and a smokescreen, it gets both. Upsides? The guns. The guns are absolutely amazing. It gets 8 of them, and they're relatively low caliber, only 100mm, but the enemy Chungmu over there is about to find out the hard way just exactly how dangerous these guns are. Look at that rate of fire. Yeah, you might want to think about smoking up there, mate. Bird Hunter has. Although he does manage to catch a couple of unlucky hits through the superstructure there. The Chungmu makes what I can only describe as a very bizarre decision here, because he is smoking up, but he's not taking cover behind the island. He's actually coming out from you might want to start reversing, because we can see you. And this is going to hurt you a lot more than it's going to hurt Bird Hunter. Okay, so the Chungmu manages to back up, but here's the issue. Bird Hunter's spotted, so he needs to get into cover behind this island. And there's this thing in World of Warships called the Minimum Assured Detection Range. Basically, it doesn't matter what's blocking line of sight, if you're within 2 kilometers of an enemy ship, you're both detected. And he's within 2 kilometers of the Chungmu. Of course, that works both ways. This is kind of a I'm not stuck in here with you, you're stuck in here with me situation, because the Chungmu can't hide either. He's also spotted. It's just a question of who this situation is going to be the most dangerous for. But there's no reason why it can't be fatal for both of them. I mean, look at the number of ships who are currently targeting Bird Hunter here. I think it spikes up to as many as 5 at one point. One thing's for sure, he cannot stay here. Oh, the team have just suffered the first casualty of the battle. The King George V has gone down. But exciting though this may be, it's only exciting because it's bloody dangerous. Ideally, the Chungmu needs to be persuaded to either bugger off or somebody's going to have to sink him. Now, normally, chasing a destroyer around an island like this is just asking to run into a face full of torpedoes as you round the corner after him, but the Chungmu has deep water torpedoes, which are only effective against cruisers, battleships, or carriers. And as he runs around the corner of the island, his division mate, Unstoppable Degenerate, in the Kronstadt finishes him off. Although, not before the enemy team claim a second battleship kill. There goes the Strasbourg. So Bird Hunter's safe for the moment, although it did cost him about 3/5 of his health. And as he pokes out around the side of that island to get those torpedoes away, he is only just still inside detection range from the Iwami, who is heading away and therefore no longer able to spot him, but does manage to get a parting salvo away, as well as some torpedoes. Yes, the Iwami, it has torpedoes, which cripples Bird Hunter's engine and shaves off even more health with a couple of lucky armor-piercing shells through the bridge and the funnel. Note, however, the Iwami is running away. And he's running away for all kinds of good reasons, mostly related to the fact that Bird Hunter's here in a Kitakaze. So, 1. Being spotted by an enemy destroyer that you can't see. 2. Destroyer means torpedoes. 3. Kitakaze means lots and lots and lots of 100mm high explosive shells, and he's lost his own team spotting down here with the death of the Chungmu. So, the Iwami doing the right thing. Bird Hunter's going to get some shots out at him, and the rate of fire on these 100mm guns is absolutely terrifying, but he's only going to get some shots out at him. The Colorado, on the other hand, is not running away. If you're a Colorado player in World of Warships, allow me to give you a spot of advice. First of all, congratulations on no longer having to play the New Mexico. The Colorado is not a bad ship. It's distinctly better in firepower terms, having 16 rather than 14-inch guns, but it is just as horribly slow, and the armour is just as But it's the speed that's the issue, and if you hadn't already learned it on the New Mexico, then maybe you'll learn it now on the Colorado, because when you're playing the Colorado, you're not really so much paying attention to what the enemy team are doing. Although paying attention to that is obviously important, but it's not really as important as paying attention to what your team are doing. If it looks like your team are thinking, maybe, in the near future, of turning around and running away, do the same thing, but do it before they do, because you will never catch up. You're just too slow. So when the tier 9 battleships on your team, when you see them saying, "Oh, I don't like the look of this, it's time for me to get out of here," take the hint, right? And stop charging towards the enemy. Because by the time you realise you've screwed up, it's too late, there's nothing you can do, you are going to die. And while it was Unstoppable Degenerate and the Kronstadt who actually got the kill, the Colorado got a first-hand experience of just exactly how terrifying it can be for a battleship to be subjected to the withering fire of the Kitakaze when it's nice and safely parked behind an island, and you are giving them all the time in the world to reduce your health from 100 to 0. Quick word about these 100mm guns, by the way. Because the standard rule for high explosive penetration in World of Warships is to divide the caliber of the guns by 6, and that gives you your high explosive penetration. And that certainly used to be true for the Kitakaze and the Harugumo at tier 10 and the Akazuki at tier 8 when they were first introduced into the game. This meant that their guns, firing high explosive, only had 16mm of penetration, which meant the only thing they could reliably damage were other destroyers, and you had to take the inertia fuse for high explosive shells skill, which meant you had to have a 10-point captain, in order to damage enemy cruisers, and unless you could score hits on the superstructure of an enemy battleship, your shells were just going to shatter. Now, there were exceptions to this rule, most notably German battleships who enjoy a quarter caliber penetration rather than a 1/6 caliber penetration high explosive rule, but this rule was also applied to these Japanese gunboat destroyers, the Akazuki, the Kitakaze here, and the Harugumo at tier 10, which meant that you didn't have to have the 10-point captain with points in the IFHE skill in order to be competitive against anything other than enemy destroyers. But if you do have a 10-point captain, and you do have the IFHE skill, that means these poxy little 100mm guns actually have 33mm of high explosive penetration, more than enough to be able to cause damage to the 32mm plating of enemy battleships and make life a living hell for them as well. Of course, that 32mm plating is only really applicable as the standard armour plating of tier 8, 9 and 10 battleships. The Ismail over here is tier 6 and doesn't even have that, so... yeah, let's watch him suffer too, shall we? This battle's quite close, by the way. I mean, officially it's dead even. Both teams have suffered 5 kills, both teams have 400 points. But because it's arms race, and there are no cap circles for them to fight over until the key area appears about halfway through the match, which has just happened. The kills and the points in arms race, I mean, they're obviously not completely irrelevant, but it's control of this central key area, because the team that holds this thing starts gaining 10 points every second, and it gets smaller as the battle goes on, making it harder and harder to win control back. So if you lose control of this key area, you've pretty much given up the game. Okay, Unstoppable, Degenerate and the Kronstadt has gone down, but given that there was basically just him and Bird Hunter up here against a whole bunch of enemy battleships, and while the Kronstadt is a strong cruiser, it's still just a cruiser. It was fairly committed. There was no way he was going to turn and give broadside to any of those guys. They would have just smashed him. So he stuck it out. He did die, but he took 2 of them down with him, bringing his kill total to 4. That just leaves the enemy carrier and the Iwami. And Bird Hunter has just run out of friends. The rest of his team are all down to the south and the southwest, engaging the rest of the enemy team over there on the western end of the map. Quick word about the enemy carrier, the Graf Zeppelin. This guy, you really don't want this kind of carrier player on your team. Not because he's bad, I mean, maybe he is, I don't know, I haven't seen enough so far to make that kind of judgment. But what I have seen is enough to tell me that he's lazy. First, he's parked right up on the Mac border, which means that he's put himself into a position where his aircraft are always going to have to go the furthest distance possible in order to engage their targets, which results in a massive DPS loss and a huge reduction in his overall efficiency. Second, despite the fact that Bird Hunter was clearly coming this way, he waits until now, when Bird Hunter is surface spotted and actively shooting at him, to fire up his engines and try to get out of there, which is obviously way too late. And it's way too late because of the third reason. He's a dirty border humping scumbag, and when you sit on the border, your engine power gradually gets reduced to nothing, which is why it's taken him forever to get off that border, which basically guarantees that that Graf Zeppelin player, who hasn't been a whole lot of use to his team alive, no longer enjoys the privilege of being alive. And his Bird Hunter's second kill. His team have taken the key area, which means they're now gaining 10 points every second. None of the 3 remaining enemy ships is in a position to do anything about it, certainly not the Iwami over here, and the Johann de Witt, who was trying, just got obliterated by the friendly Kutuzov, so it just remains to see whether or not Bird Hunter can add a final kill to his tally before the team reach 1,000 points, and this match ends. And his torpedoes are ready to go, as is his torpedo reload booster. Let's not forget that the Iwami has torpedoes of its own, however, but don't worry, he's not going to eat Iwami torpedoes. The Iwami's guns are going to finish him off before he has a chance to run into them, saving him that embarrassment at least. And right as the second set of torpedoes from the reload booster finish off the Iwami, giving him the It's Just a Flesh Wound award to sit comfortably on the trophy shelf along with all of the other awards that he earned in this battle right before the team reach 1,000 points. And with one surviving ship on the enemy team, this match is over. A whole chest full of awards there for both Bird Hunter 95 in the Kitakaze and Unstoppable Degenerate in the Kronstadt. I think they're going to be walking with a distinct list of port from here on in. However, despite that roller coaster ride of a battle, neither of them were actually top of the team on experience earned. That honour goes to the friendly Kutuzov, who had a blistering game. I wish I'd actually been able to see that from his perspective, with 2,700 base XP. But while the Kutuzov certainly had a better game, I don't know whether or not he had as exciting a game. And while they didn't top his score, with both of them clearing 2,000 base XP, they've certainly got absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. Bird Hunter 95 and Unstoppable Degenerate, well done to you both. I hope everybody enjoyed watching them. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.